At least my ex had a bigger one. The words slipped from Sophia's mouth with a smirk, but for me it felt like a knife straight to the chest. We were sitting in the living room, the TV flickering in the background, when she dropped that line like it was a casual joke. I froze, my heart pounding, the humiliation burning deeper than I could explain. My wife, my own wife, comparing me to another man, laughing as if crushing me was entertainment. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't shout, I didn't argue. I just stared at her, my mind already racing in another direction. She thought I was weak, that I would swallow the insult and let her walk all over me. She had no idea she had just set in motion the one thing she would regret forever. Before I continue, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share this story, because trust me, you'll want to hear how this all ends. I smiled faintly, just enough to confuse her. Instead of fighting back, I simply said, "Noted." The word rolled off my tongue calmly, but in my head plans were forming. I noticed how often she was glued to her phone. The late-night texts she brushed off, the trips she claimed were girls' nights but didn't add up. Every puzzle piece was suddenly clicking together. Sophia's cruel joke wasn't just about me, it was about him, the man she thought she was keeping hidden. But here's the thing, while she was distracted with her secrets, I was about to build mine, quietly, carefully. And when the time came, I wouldn't just confront her, I would destroy her entire game. I watched her for days, like a detective in my own life, learning every little lie she let slip. She laughed about office stress, but arrived home with perfume on her collar and lipstick on her cup. I stopped accusing and started collecting screenshots, receipts, timestamps, everything that proved the pattern. When she left her phone unlocked for a second, I didn't pry for drama. I copied messages and backed them up to a hidden folder. I found a burner number in her contacts and traced late-night calls to a hotel 2 towns over. Instead of confronting her, I put a tracker in her car. It was small and legal, just enough to follow without being seen. Every late return matched a strange charge on our joint card. Every team dinner had a timestamp that lied. She bragged to friends about how thrilling her secret was. She never imagined I'd turn her boasting into ammunition. At night, I printed receipts and labeled them, building a timeline that read like betrayal by the calendar. Friends who adored her at brunch began to squint when I casually mentioned a date or a place. Curiosity woke up. I quietly told one trusted colleague at her office to double-check expense reports. A seed of doubt was planted. The little moves didn't feel like revenge yet. They felt like making sure truth lived outside my memory. One unexpected twist. I discovered he'd given her a small gift with our initials scratched off, proving secrecy was planned. I didn't show rage. I showed calm. Calm confuses liars more than anger ever could. When she sent a smug voice note about how easy it is, I saved it and added it to the folder marked with dates. People who once praised her began asking questions. Suspicion is contagious when it has facts. By the end of the week, my stack of proof had weight, not just paper but the power to change everything. She still smiled at dinner parties, not knowing the net I'd woven had already caught most of her lies. The real game was only beginning, and I had the map. The night she joked again, tossing her cruel words like confetti, I smiled instead of snapping. That smile scared her more than anger would have. She couldn't read it. I told her I'd be out of town for a business trip and booked a fake flight just for the alibi. In reality, I stayed close, watching her steps as she thought the coast was clear. She rushed to pack a small bag, slipping into her car with extra care, thinking no one noticed. The tracker I'd placed beeped on my screen, confirming the same hotel as before. I didn't follow inside. I didn't need to. Cameras on site gave me what I wanted. One call to a friend in security gave me footage of her walking in arm with him. Their laughter was recorded. Their lies had no volume button anymore. Instead of rage, I sent flowers to the hotel room with a card signed, "From your husband, enjoy your night." That's when panic began. She called me 5 times, her voice shaky, pretending to ask about dinner. I didn't answer. Silence is louder than confrontation. Meanwhile, I set up accounts, secured my assets, and lined up meetings with a lawyer. The stage was mine. Every move was clean, silent, professional. Not revenge yet, just preparation. I withdrew half the joint funds legally, leaving her just enough to panic when the rest closed off. That night, as she thought she was untouchable, I was drafting a future where she'd beg for air. I wasn't just exposing her cheating, I was making sure she'd choke on the very lies she thought kept her safe. The plan wasn't about shouting. It was about timing, precision, and one perfect reveal. And she had no clue that the biggest storm of her life was already waiting at her front door. The night I chose was her birthday, the perfect stage where she loved to shine and perform. She walked in with that practiced glow, hugging people, expecting applause and kisses on the cheek. I watched her soak it up, pretending to be the loving husband while my heart hammered calm. Halfway through cake, I stood and asked everyone to look at the big screen for a little memory. She smiled, safe, thinking it would be cute photos. The room hummed with warm chatter. The slideshow started sweet, childhood pics, vacations. Then the tone shifted and the music stopped feeling safe. First came the hotel photo, then the video of her and him slipping into a room, laughing like they owned secrets. A sharp gasp moved through the room. Her smile froze and the color left her face. I had printed the receipts and left them on the table. People reached and read, confusion turning into anger. Her friend who always defended her looked up with hurt in her eyes and walked out without a word. She tried to laugh it off, then her voice trembled as she begged, "It's not what you think." I let the audio play next, her bragging voice saying, "He can't ever know," and the room grew colder. A cousin whispered, "I can't believe she would do this," and the cousin's whispers spread like wildfire. Someone took a photo of the screen and sent it to a co-worker. The phone buzz was a small drum of doom. She dropped to her knees, pleading, but her mother's face was blank, like a portrait erased. I didn't yell. I let the facts do the shouting while the party dissolved into whispers and broken trust. Her panic was real now. Not the sharp confidence she used on me, but raw fear that echoed in her eyes. When the last guest left, the house felt empty, and I closed the safe with one steady hand, my plan moving to the next page. By morning, the slideshow was already in group chats. Her phone buzzed like a small storm. HR called her in, and I watched from a distance as her confident mask cracked behind the glass door. I had sent copies of receipts and timestamps to a trusted colleague the night before. Facts move faster than rumors. At the office, whispers grew into questions, then into formal audits. Expense reports were pulled and matched to my timeline. Her boss avoided her in the hallway. One manager gave a quiet, "We'll need to discuss this," and she turned pale. I'd already moved key savings into accounts she couldn't touch. Months of quiet protection, not petty revenge. When the bank froze the joint card after my call, she learned in a boutique line what it felt like to be stopped by money. She tried to bargain, offering apologies that sounded rehearsed, but paperwork doesn't listen to words. I filed for divorce and custody the same week. The petitions were calm, clinical, and immovable. Her mother texted short replies. Friends stopped answering calls. Social support is fragile when evidence arrives. One unexpected twist. An auditor flagged transfers tied to the boss, dragging him into scrutiny and making him run for cover. Her project leads reassigned her work. Her access was limited. Small professional deaths stacked up fast. The kids' school was told the basics, truth handled with care, so their routine stayed steady while adults sorted chaos. She posted a public apology that backfired when private messages began circulating beneath it like shadows. Every attempt she made to control the narrative only added more documents to my growing legal folder. That night, she sat on the floor among unpaid bills and screenshots, pleading into a silence that meant nothing would rewind. I locked the last folder in the safe and slept with a quiet that felt like justice, not triumph. The pieces were falling into place. Law, money, reputation, each would finish what the birthday started. The courthouse smelled of paper and finality. Mia walked in like someone waiting for a storm to pass, not knowing it would be her world's weather report. My lawyer spoke clearly, presenting a timeline so tight it left no space for charm or excuses. Receipts, messages, hotel footage, and witness statements lined up like a single undeniable argument on the judge's desk. She tried to speak, tears and pleas ready, but testimony and timestamps drowned out performance. The custody decision favored stability for the kids. The judge noted missed pickups and inconsistent presence on record. Assets were split with eyes on the bank trails. Suspicious withdrawals were flagged for repayment and review. Her employer placed her on leave. Termination soon followed after the company reviewed the audit I'd forwarded. Outside reporters circled. Inside, neutral faces recorded the truth, while her world shivered under its own weight. One small twist. A former ally quietly handed evidence to investigators that deepened the paper trail against her lover. She stood in the hallway after the ruling, hollowed and exposed, while I felt neither gloat nor glee. Only relief. Months of quiet work, patient collection, and careful legal steps had created a result that yelling never could. My kids hugged me in the parking lot. Their trust was intact because truth had been made fact, not rumor. She tried to rebuild later, but foundations shaken by proof rarely stand straight again. I closed that chapter with practical moves, schedules, lawyers, therapy for the kids, and a calm routine. The final lesson: patience, proof, and planning win where anger only burns bridges. I walked away from the courthouse lighter, not because she suffered, but because my family was finally safe. Her reputation was a quiet ruin. My life regained slow momentum, steady, deliberate, honest. And in the quiet that followed, the real victory lived in normal days, not headlines.